Good morning, Horizon. It's my privilege to lead the Lenten Devotional this morning, and this day we're going to be talking about Luke 13:18 through 21. One of the signs of a master teacher is he can take ordinary things to illuminate very large principles. He can take things from everyday life and say, let me use this to kind of metaphorically help you understand something that may be hard to understand. Jesus was a master teacher. Well, how do we know that? Because the things he taught we're still trying to understand, and they're still with us 2,000 years later. Depth and breadth and the profundity of his teaching, right, still captures the imagination. So few people that would be true of from 2,000 years ago. So few voices remain from that era. Jesus does, and it's a strong voice. So now just imagine Jesus in a normal day. He's been hosted in a house, and then he woke up and saw a woman making bread and working leaven through the bread to make it rise. And later that day, he walks through an open marketplace, and he sees there someone selling mustard seeds to farmers. And he thinks later on, in a moment of silence, how much that's very much like the kingdom of God. And he thinks about how he wants to communicate deep truths about the kingdom to his followers in ways they can understand. So he says to them this. Jesus asked, "What is the kingdom of God like? What shall I compare it to? It's like a mustard seed which a man took and planted in his garden. It grew and became a tree, and the birds perched in its branches." Again he asked, "What shall I compare the kingdom of God to? It's like yeast that a woman took and mixed into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough." What's his point? Well, for you and I, if you think about, let's say we're in an area where there's forest fires, and let's say that a whole grove gets wiped out, and people come in and plant pine trees to replace what was burnt out. Well, day over day and week over week, you're not going to see any change to the seed that is planted. It's a slow, imperceptible thing that's happening underneath the ground. Month over month, you might see a small sapling. Year over year, you might see 2 or 3 feet, 4 or 5 feet growth. But it's going to take 50, 60, 70 years to regrow some of those really tall pines, right? And it's going to take a lifetime. And you will not be able to know from moment to moment how it's growing. In the same way, yeast is invisible. A very small amount works through a very large amount of dough. But the effect on the dough is unmistakable. And it doesn't do just a part of it, it does the whole thing. It makes me think about the principle of the kingdom of God. We love big things, dramatic things, quick things in American culture. We attribute significance and success when there's an instant result and it's big and dramatic and bold, right? The kingdom of God's not like that. The kingdom of God captures the heart and imagination, begins to work through the human faculties, out, down deep, and then out from down the heart into the actual life. And it begins to slowly bring change, imperceptible at times, but unmistakable over longer periods of time. This can be true in human history. We see the kingdom of God, what started with this small group of followers, working through so that now there's a witness in every tongue, tribe, and nation. Literally a third of the population ascribe in some way to belief in Jesus. It can happen generationally in families, right? A great-grandfather or a grandfather begins to come to faith, passes that faith on to his children, the children's children, the children's children. In my own family, my grandfather was a marginal Christian on one side. My grandmother and grandfather on the other side, they were strong Christians. But then my parents became very strong Christians, pass that on to their children. I'm trying to pass it on to my children, right? The kingdom of God working out in family and generational history, but it's also true in my own life. Thinking about how in 32 years of walking with Jesus, what has been slowly kind of worked in and worked out of my life. The kingdom of God, a force that cannot be denied. When we open our hearts to it, it does massive change. But sometimes it's slow and perceptible, but often unmistakable. I hope you realize as you look at your own life that this is true. Grace and peace to you.